Welcome to The Explainer, where today we're breaking down why the secret to innovation isn't a brilliant plan, but a brilliant question.
Let's start with a really sobering number, 90%. Over 9 out of 10 new products fail. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about a massive corporate launch or a garage startup, the result is almost always the same.
So what's going on here? It turns out there's a fatal flaw baked into the traditional way we're all taught to think about business. And it's a flaw that costs billions and sinks so many potentially great ideas. To really get a handle on this problem, let's dive into one of the most legendary failures in business history, the story of Webvan. So, back in the dot-com era, Webvan had this absolutely visionary idea for online grocery delivery. They had massive funding, a world-class team, and a flawless execution plan. The only problem? Their whole plan was completely wrong. See, their strategy was built on these huge, untested assumptions. They just assumed customers wanted their service. So they spent $40 million on their first warehouse before even launching. They hired over 900 people in just a few months. They built this entire massive operation based on a business plan, not a single piece of real customer feedback.
Webvan's spectacular failure really shines a light on a fundamental misunderstanding of what a new venture truly is. They thought their job was to execute a plan. It wasn't.
And this is where startup expert Steve Blank comes in with a totally game-changing definition. A startup isn't just a mini version of a big company. Its job isn't to execute, its job is to search.
Okay, let's break this down because it's so important. A large company executes a known, proven model. They know their customers, they know what features to build, they're all about efficiency. But a startup, you're starting with a ton of unknowns. Your customers are a mystery. The features they want, you have no idea. So your focus can't be on efficiency. It has to be on learning.
So if a startup's whole job is to search, how do you actually do that in a structured way? Well, the first step is a major mental shift. You have to see your business plan not as a set of facts, but as a series of guesses. Every single part of it, who you think your customer is, what problem they have, how much they'll pay, it's all just an untested hypothesis. And that's where the customer development model comes in. It's a framework to turn those guesses into facts. It's a 4-step process that forces you to, number 1, get out of the building to actually test your ideas. Then, validate that you have a sales model that can scale. After that, you create demand, and only then, finally, do you transition into building a company focused on execution. Take IMVU, for example. Instead of building some perfect product, they launched a buggy, minimal version. They listened to what users actually said and discovered their initial assumptions were totally wrong. They literally iterated their way to a multi-million-dollar business. But here's the thing. Getting out of the building is completely useless if you don't know how to listen, and more importantly, how to ask the right questions. There's this great story about Sherlock Holmes that illustrates this perfectly. A prized horse gets stolen, the police are baffled, and Holmes solves it in minutes, just by asking a few simple questions. So first, he just establishes a baseline fact. Was the dog present? Yes, it was. Next, he asks about the thing that didn't happen. Did the dog bark? No. And that, right there, is the key. His final question makes the answer just obvious. Who would the dog never bark at? Its owner, the stable master. The truth was revealed entirely through questions, not statements. And this really gets at the difference between a reactive and a proactive mindset. The reactive person asks, what's wrong with them? But the proactive person asks, what did I miss? It's all about seeking to understand, not just reacting emotionally. And you can take this even further. The most effective questions are actually tailored to the listener's personality. For someone who's very ordered, a process-focused question like, can we create a monthly follow-up program, will land perfectly. For an emotive person, acknowledging their feelings builds trust. And for a creative type, you spark their imagination.
All right, let's bring this all home and see how this works not just for building a business, but for solving a literal life-or-death problem.
In 1970, the world heard those chilling words. The Apollo 13 mission was crippled by an explosion, and the lives of 3 astronauts were hanging by a thread. Back on the ground, NASA engineers were facing an impossible challenge. The air in the spacecraft was turning toxic. They had to build a new filter using only the random parts on board. The problem? They had to figure out how to fit a square filter into a round hole. Now,
There was no plan for this. So what did they do? Mission Control dumped every single available item onto a table and just started asking questions. Can we connect this to that? What happens if we tear this apart? It was this relentless, step-by-step questioning that led them to the ingenious solution that saved those astronauts' lives.
So, the takeaway here is huge. Whether you're trying to bring astronauts home or launch a new product, success isn't about having a perfect plan. It's about having the courage to relentlessly question your assumptions. So, I'll leave you with this. What untested assumption is your success riding on today?